As I go in East Tennessee, hope you have been enjoying your day. Things got a little messy into the middle of your Sunday. We saw the first round of storms make their way in, starting to enter our far western counties around 11 a.m., moving through the area. We had those severe thunderstorm warnings that came in at around 2 p.m. Here, including in Knox County and much of our central counties as we got into the valley. Now, that has continued to pass on. We're seeing some clear conditions right now as of about 6 o'clock. And now as we look forward to the next bout of rain, I do have some updates for you. Now, we are still seeing a similar wind threat of wind gusts getting upwards of 60 to 70 miles per hour. Hail is actually looking to be a little bit bigger. We could see up to $half size hail. That's 1¼ inches in diameter. And also, I'd say probably the best update is our tornado threat is really starting to look even more unlikely. That's something that has continued to trend downward. So when we talk about the reason that that's happening, we are seeing some upper level support for these storms. You've got a lot of deep wind shear and a lot of deep instability that's going to be born from these storms, but it's happening at the higher levels, not much at the surface. Here on the surface, we're seeing a little bit more of stability, so that's what's going to make those tornadoes unlikely, but we are still going to see the very strong winds, which is going to make holding heavier hail possible as these storms continue to pass on through. Now, I mentioned $half size. Unfortunately, it's not here on this graphic, but it's somewhat between quarter size and ping pong size. This is about 1 to 1½ inches. There were some reports further to our south in the Chattanooga area of golf ball size hail. That's about 1 3/4 inches, but our National Weather Service here in Morristown is starting to actually trend things to be a little bit weaker, which is definitely some good news. Now, when it comes to the severe risk that we've been looking at all day, there actually were not really any changes from what we saw yesterday. We still have this level 1 risk in parts of upper East Tennessee, most of our region sitting in this level 2 risk, including the Valley and the Plateau, and then we have this little bit of level 3 risk, including parts of Fentress and a little bit of Scott County. That really is a part of the greater Middle Tennessee as you get into the Middle Tennessee Plateau, reaching up into the Ohio Valley, especially in parts of Indiana and Columbus, where they have a tornado watch in effect. We also see more of that severity as you get around Memphis, Little Rock, and into Tupelo, Mississippi. So this is the radar we're seeing right now. All of this being pushed ahead by this cold front. This is the first system that we were originally seeing, now fully out of the state, but you see a line of severe thunderstorm warnings as you get through the states of a little bit of South Carolina, but mostly Georgia and Alabama. You see more of those severe thunderstorm warnings over here in Arkansas, and then there was a tornado warning as we got towards the Indiana-Ohio line. They are also seeing a good number of those severe thunderstorms as well, just kind of like we were. Now, as we move forward, we're going to see this front continue to push its way in, creating that line of powerful thunderstorms all the way down from the Ohio Valley into the Mississippi River area. You see right there between Tupelo and Jackson, very strong thunderstorms, but they're going to start to enter our area as we get into around midnight. Some of those heaviest storms I really think going to be between about midnight to 2 a.m. Before things start to spread out. We lose some organization as those storms continue to make their way down through the valley and heading in towards the mountains. Good news is these storms are really showing to be out of the way by about 5 a.m. So 12 to 5 is the full time period that we're looking for with these storms. Usually these frontal boundary storms move through very quickly because of the front, so you'll possibly be in bed, maybe even asleep by the time these storms get started, and it could be fully out of the way by the time you're waking up in the morning. And then we just continue on to a much nicer day with some partly cloudy skies, even mostly sunny at some time periods. So, excuse me. Now, we are seeing two different models here that I'm kind of in between right now. There's the first one, the HRRR that we were using, that was working perfectly during this afternoon. It was a little bit off in terms of placement of our stronger storms, but it did have the timing right. This one has made a little bit of a shift to make those storms move a little bit further to the northwest, but still moving from northwest to southeast. So we see more of that movement now coming fully out of the north, and it has a lot of really strong storms coming into the area. This might have been something that we were forecasting earlier, where there was a time period where we were seeing some increased threat, but I'm starting to kind of not love this as much. You see a lot of that high intensity, those purples and those whites. Those could definitely be some storms that would make tornadoes, but just because of the aggression of that storm compared to the weakening of the forecast that we're seeing, I'm not entirely positive about this model. I'll take you to another one that we like to use, which is the graph, which I think is starting to line up a little bit more with what forecasts have been talking about. So we're still getting that noontime arrival, but again, storms coming out of the northwest, like we were saying before. You see that stronger line here, this wider breadth of storms with some of those deeper reds and oranges as you get into the area of our far northwestern counties in the plateau. I think this really makes sense because this is where we see that elevated risk, especially if we do start to see some tornadoes. I'd say this is where they're going to be likely as we get into parts of the plateau. And then as we start to move on with time and we see these storms work their way into the valley, they start to lose some of that strength, lose that organization, which is usually a pattern for a lot of these stronger storms as they move their way into the area. So I'm starting to trend a little bit towards this. We get a little bit more organization from from the uplift as they start to make their way towards the mountains. So you see maybe some stronger storms as we get into Sevier, a little bit of Blount County, and also some parts of upper East Tennessee before, again, this moves out of the way. Now, this model, again, is starting to move things a little bit faster. So now that time period looking about from midnight to 4, that's definitely something I'll keep my eye on as we get into the coming hours, and then clearing onto a nice day. Now, rainfall is looking generally around a ½ an inch, if not less, but because they're thunderstorms, this rainfall is definitely not going to be this even. We will likely continue to see some places that have some much heavier downpours. But in the meantime, here's your full 7-day forecast. Once we get past that rain, we're going to see some much nicer conditions. Temperatures still expected to make their way into the upper 80s. Because of the cold front, we are going to see those temps drop down into the middle 80s, but not really for very long. We're going to keep seeing sunny conditions through the week, maybe some light daytime heating showers because of the high temperatures and instability that we'll see, but that won't be something that'll impact your whole day. You see us getting into the lower 90s as we reach the weekend.